Okay, let's start. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to see both our digital colleagues, and digital participants and colleagues, and also everybody here present in Riga. Digital transformation is something that for me goes back a long way. I remember in the middle of, or the first part of the 90s, when I walked into the administration office in school, I saw a computer there, and somebody commented that, oh, this is just a passing fad, you can ignore it. We'll soon be back to doing everything through paper, so just ignore it. Yeah, we're still there. We are still doing everything even more than in the 90s. So today we are here to discuss implications of digital transformation, both on a wider scale and also through the prism of Latvia. We see that in some aspects, technological transfer and transformations are happening ever quicker, but some are not really speeding up, some are kind of constant. We see that technology is an amazing way to empower the power, usually the ones that already have it, or the money or the resources. So the political question, of course, is, well, how do we make it inclusive? How do we equalize the opportunities so that technology is not just, well, a control mechanism? After all, we today have an amazing view how digital totalitarian state can function in China. The question is, can technologies be equally amazing success story for democracies? And it's still something that we have yet to see, because I've talked to, for example, people from Tunis who said that they have invented the revolution through digital means, because they started organizing their revolution 10 years ago through Facebook. And so they think that they invented it. I'm not so sure, but well, good luck to, well, no longer it's good luck to them, because the changes have basically reverted in Tunisia. But anyway, what matters is that you're here and we can discuss these questions. Well, not so much about Tunis, but more about Latvia and EU. What matters is that technology is available and accessible to everybody, and not just a control mechanism. And we as organization, Manabels, My Voice, also are dealing with it through multiple prisms and aspects. For example, the question of resources is absolutely a big one. For example, in the last few years, we see the IT costs are, well, they're rising, to put it diplomatically. And we as non-governmental organization have to deal with that. We have to compete with IT sector for IT resources. So how does civil society organizations compete with IT sector? That's a bit difficult question, but well, during the day, during the debates, we can touch upon that too. So thank you, everybody. I'm giving floor.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. My name is Gatis Ozols. I represent the government sector today. I'm from the ministry responsible for digital transformation, horizontal things, and also for public service policy development, and also some practical things we are doing. And listening to the colleagues said previously, I think we now live in a very interesting time that on the one hand, a lot of public services, also democratic processes are, are getting more and more digitized. And currently in Latvia, we see that almost 90% of the public services are available digitally. So according to European statistics, it's around 87%. In EU, it's around 75%. So we are pretty digitized as a society here in Latvia. And we have digitized the basic public services, such as you can enroll for different subsidies. You can get your driving car registration online. You can, thanks to Manabals, also participate in democratic processes and give some recommendations to Parliament. Also, you can have a notary act signed digitally only, and so on and so on. So much services are put in digital environment. And what we see is also that, on the other hand, public institutions and sometimes sometimes see that, okay, maybe we don't need anymore to provide services in a normal way. We can just get along with a digital way. And here we see in the same time that there's a lot of people which don't have those basic skills. They need to have the ability to use those public services. They need actually ability to participate in democratic processes. For that, they need digital skills at the moment. And then we see that here is a big role also of public sector and also of NGO sector to get all those people on board on those democratic processes. On the other hand, we see we live in the time when artificial intelligence and the technologies are outperforming people in some specific tasks, not anymore only in dirty, dull, and dangerous things it was in the beginning. Now we see it's more and more also in creative things. We see what's happening on the art space currently, like DALL-E or stable diffusions and such things. And we need to get more aware that society and the content around us could be generated and it can influence us. And here again is a very big role of NGO sector to raise the concerns, raise awareness how we use and employ those technologies in such processes. And I think this is a good point for discussion here, that we, from the one hand, we speak about some basic things, how to ensure that people can access technology, they can participate in democratic processes using technologies. On the other hand, how we are aware of what can technology, how they can manipulate some things around us. And I think these topics for today, you have put in several workshops, will be a good input for this for policymakers. As policymakers also, they are working in their environment, but they need also some guidance, input, and support and co-creation also from civil society, from NGOs. And this could serve as a good point for that, I think, and a good starting point. So I wish you a very successful day, a very inspiring day, and yeah, productive day. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, digital transformation has a huge impact, or we want it to have a huge impact also on democratic processes. And actually, this is why we're here to talk today and to discuss with you. We're here to present to you some of the work we have done and share some policies, some policies that are done in the EU level, and then tell you what we have been doing and how you can help us ensure more inclusive digital policies. Let me share my screen shortly, and we can begin. Well, today we will have a fine balance between us sharing our knowledge on the EU level and you sharing your contributions on how to make digital policies inclusive. In that way, we can all exchange ideas and learn from each other. Before we dive into the training, let me shortly tell you what has been going on for ECAS on digital transformation. So ECAS is part of a network of more than 90 organizations called the Civil Society Convention on the Conference of the Future of Europe. This convention aimed at scrutinizing the democratic functioning of the Conference on the Future of Europe and ensuring genuine involvement of citizens and representative associations in this process. Under this context, ECAS has been leading the digital transformation cluster, which aims at bringing proposals that will feed into the EU's priority of a Europe fit for the digital age. The ambition of this priority is to strengthen the EU's sovereignty and set standards on data, technology, and infrastructure, with a clear focus on education, ethics, fundamental rights, and European values. To achieve that, the cluster operated an crowdsourcing process, receiving recommendation from civil society organizations across Europe on how to ensure inclusive policies on 5 broad digital transformation categories: digital democracy, digital economy, digital rights, digital safeguards, and digital education. Now, as you may already notice from our agenda, these are also the thematics of the co-creation sessions we will have. So for each co-creation session, my colleague Elisa, which is ICASI's program director of the European Democracy Focus Area and is here with us, she's joining online. She will let you know of the main terms, dilemmas, and some exemplary recommendations that civil society have shared on these focus areas, on how to make these focus areas and the policies surrounding them more inclusive. As you see in the current slide, we will touch upon the possibilities and risks that transitioning to e-government and e-voting entails, the skill gap that the institutions will need to take into considerations, implications on privacy, economy, etc. The exemplary recommendations that Elisa will show to you and we will discuss today have derived from the crowdsourcing exercise the cluster implemented and led to 216 ideas, represented about 1,200 CSOs across Europe. The process was composed of 4 phases: idea collection, idea selection through voting among all the available ideas that were posed during the previous phase, policy formulation, and then resolution and adoption. The organization you see in the slides are only some of the working group of the cluster, and since ensuring inclusion in digital transformation policies of Europe is of strategic significance to the EU priorities, we have taken up the challenge of seeking advice from as many possible stakeholders in a variety of local contexts. Your contribution and the contribution of other participants across Europe is a step towards ensuring that the policies that will be developed will fit the experience of the Latvian society and especially of the experience of vulnerable groups. For its focus area, after Elisa telling you some details and background information on the focus area, we will have the co-creation activities. So these will be facilitated through Slido. So please log in now. You can do that either by going to slido.com and put as the unique identification number of the event hashtag 211993.8 and then the passcode 123456, or you can log in via the QR. You can open your camera, scan the QR, click on the link that will pop up, and just put the passcode 123456. Let's test it. How familiar are you with the topic of digital transformation in EU? So you can just declare where you stand from between you're an expert or you're completely green. Okay, let's see. We already have we have 11 contributions. Okay. 12. So most of the people here with us have some knowledge, but okay, let's see if we can take you to the next level. We do have some people that have no background knowledge about digital transformation. Okay, this is an interesting group. Elisa, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So I will be here showing the slides to the group and the rest. And maybe now that we know who is who and we know the background of the participants, we can begin. What do you think?
Yes, sure. I just wanted to give maybe a bit of context. So, well, hi everyone. My name is Elisa and I'm the program director for the European Democracy focus area at the European Citizen Action Service. And we are an NGO based in Brussels that has been for 30 years already empowering citizens to exercise their rights. And my expertise really lies in digital democracy. I know Imans very well, so it's nice to see him again today. And we've been collaborating with Manabals.lv since a long time already on many different projects. So I just wanted to complement a bit what Vasiliki just said. As you know, this year and last year, let's say, there was the process of the Conference of the Future of Europe, which was started by the President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. And basically what happened was that the process started with the idea that citizens would give recommendations to the EU about different topics, including digital policies. And so civil society organizations all over Europe were a bit, let's say, frustrated by the fact that we didn't have a voice to give in this process. So this is why the convention was created, in order to have NGOs all across Europe to give a voice also in the process of the Conference of the Future of Europe, and also on the topics that were there. And the topics, as I said, included also digital transformation. So what I'm going to present today to you is basically what these NGOs that was working on these recommendations have come up with on the topic of digital transformation. I was leading the digital transformation cluster, so I was leading this group of NGOs working on these policies recommendations. So today I will be showing you what these NGOs have come up with the convention. Then what I did was that I went to Strasbourg virtually online, and I was in all of the working groups of the Conference of the Future of Europe on digital policies. And I actually presented these recommendations to the working group, and together with the working group co-chairs and the citizens, we actually came up all together with the final policy recommendations on digital policies for the Conference on the Future of Europe. So this is how to, just to show you that we actually did have impact on the final recommendations that came out from the Conference of the Future of Europe through this whole process of the convention. So today I'll just show you a bit what we came up with. This is not the full report. We can send it to everyone, of course. These are basically just some of the recommendations. And then we're looking forward to hearing your voice in Latvia from Latvian citizens, because we've already been in Ireland, Portugal, we're going to Luxembourg as well, and Estonia this year. And then next year, we're going to do another 5 countries, because we're trying to understand if local citizens, national citizens such as yourselves, agree with these, and to see the difference between the different countries in Europe on how much we're advanced digitally, and also how much we're inclusive in our digital societies. So this is to give you a bit of the context on why we're doing this. It's to understand if these different countries actually feel the same way on how inclusive our digital society is. Okay, so we can start with the first theme.
Yes.
Vasiliki?
Yes, of course. Let's start with digital democracy.
All right, so when we talked about digital democracy in our working group, we kind of came up with a general understanding of what it was. And we did that for all of the 5 different themes. So the first one is digital democracy. So when we say digital democracy, we mean the use of information and communication technology in the political and governmental processes. And here, let's say that we have 4 different concepts. So we talk about e-government services, of course, when we're using ICT to enhance public administration or public services. And this, most probably, you know very well. For example, in Estonia as well, they use e-government services a lot. And then also other countries with your e-identity card, etc. Then the second concept is around e-transparency. So the use of these technologies to enhance the transparency of the government. So how everything should have access online. So all of the information of how legislative procedures are happening, etc., are accessible to citizens online. The third one is called e-participation, and it's really the use of technology to allow citizens to participate in decision-making processes, to improve policies and laws and co-create policies together with their politicians, for example. So it's, for example, the manabalts.lv is a good example of e-participation, allowing citizens to actually put things as a proposal for legislation in the parliament. And the fourth one is basically part of the third one, but it's e-voting and e-elections. So obviously, when you can vote online in elections, and voters are allowed to have record a secret ballot and in an electronic system for elections. Okay. So let's see what the recommendations came up from the NGOs in the convention. So the main challenges that we'll see across the 5 topics that I'll showcase today are mainly around inclusiveness. So inclusiveness, accessibility, and transparency, we did not predefine in the beginning when we started the group, but actually the main challenge of digital in general will always be across all of the topics, inclusiveness and accessibility. And you'll see that in the next topics. So what do civil society across Europe, mainly European civil societies, have proposed as actions? So for example, to make access to free, equal, affordable internet a fundamental right for every EU citizen. This is, for example, something that already exists in Finland. In Finland, if you're a Finnish citizen, you have the internet as a fundamental right. That means that it's your right to have fast internet in your life. So this is something that we would like to have at the EU level as well. The second one is around public services. So e-government services, they should be fully accessible for hard to reach segments of the population. So for example, low income families or migrants, etc. So a proposed action is to fund and collaborate more with NGOs and CSOs that are currently supporting those who are digitally excluded in these services. And also to expand initiatives that support and guide citizens in the digital transition. So for example, with trainings or just really being able to give information more often to citizens. Then we also propose to publicly finance and develop more open, free and open source software license for the e-government solutions. That was something that people really were pushing for, so open source. Then also expanding e-participation mechanism by testing and combining new methods of citizen engagement. So not only, for example, petitions, but also crowdsourcing legislation, participatory budgeting. And the fifth one was also around e-voting at the next European elections, which will be in 2024. So this is something that civil society would like to push. Of course, provided that e-elections are secure, efficient, and can guarantee transparency in the process. So these are just some of the recommendations that came up. And now we're curious to know what you think should be done and your experience.
Thank you, Elisa. Yes, indeed. Let's dive into the digital democracy Slido. Again, please scan your QR if you're already in. Let's begin. Okay. The first question is, do you regularly use online in government public services in Latvia? I will go through all the questions so you can fill it in, hit submit, and then we will see them step by step all together. Do you prefer public administration services to be online or offline? Do you find it easy to access online governmental information, such as public services, legislative procedures, policy-making processes, and infos on MPs, etc.? Do you find it easy to access online information of the EU institutions? Did you ever use any participation tool to voice your ideas or engage in policy-making, such as consultations, participatory budgeting, crowdsourcing, e-petitions? And would you be comfortable in voting online at the next European elections? What do you think is the main challenge to accessing government services online? And finally, what should be improved in terms of accessibility and inclusiveness in digital democracy? Okay, so I will give you a few seconds to fill in your responses. I know that some are open-ended questions, so it will take some time to formulate your responses. Hopefully, what Elisa shared can already help you articulate what's wrong, what's good, what works, what doesn't work in terms of digital democracy and how to make it inclusive as a process. We already have 2 responses, so 3 responses now. We all of the voting participants have considered use regularly online in government public services in Latvia. So we have 4, and again, we have 100% yes, and there's a response 5. Okay, I will move on to the next slide.
Well, let's give them a few minutes. Let's just give them a few minutes to reflect a bit, and then we can come back to it later.
Okay, sure. We already have 9, 10 responses. I will give 1 more minute and then we can move on to seeing the responses. Yes?
I think the people who understand who answer differently will not answer the swap because it's
You know, that's a valid point, and we have we had such a discussion in Portugal in this event, and we tried to see how we can do it, but it is very difficult when you're online doing an event, trying to be inclusive and facilitate everyone that can come or not, cannot. So your point is very accurate, but what we're trying to do is actually be as explicit on how to log into Slido, and yeah.
What was the point? I didn't hear.
Oh, sorry. So he said that most of the people, of course, use regularly e-government because we're doing this online. So already the pool that we are addressing is digitally literate in a way.
Yeah, sure. But of course,
Okay.
like with
Yes.
well, it's also very cultural, I would have to say, because honestly, I'm Italian and they're not very good e-government services. I know that in Latvia and Estonia, you're much more, you know, you're much more advanced than we are, but my identity card is still in paper. I mean, this is where I come from, so sometimes even if we use the internet, it still doesn't really mean that we use e-government services. And here we're really meaning with, you know, with your identity card, if you pay your taxes online, if you use all of those, available public administration services, if you join consultations and things. But obviously today, of course, people are much more digitally literate compared to others because of the format of the event, for sure.
You know, Elisa, that's a fair point, because I'm Greek for context, and I can see it in Greece. Before we didn't have e-government tools, and now we do, and they're good and they're working, because there was a bad situation in the beginning, which we had e-government tools, but they were not working properly. So I can see the rise of people using e-government tools, like you said, because of tools being actually intuitive. Okay, let me do the analysis of the results and let's go through them together if you wish. So most of the people use regularly government public services. We have 20 responses for this question, and we have a 10% sometimes. No one responded no. Do you prefer public administration services to be online or offline? 100% responded online. Do you find it easy to access online governmental information? Most of the people, over half of the audience, voted sometimes. And then we have yes as the second response with 30%, and then no. I do not know has 0%, which is good. By the way, do not feel obliged to, this is why we have the I do not know response. Do not feel obliged to respond in a way. We also want to know if there is a lack of understanding on your end to see to feed these recommendations and make sure that everyone can understand what's going on the legislative procedures and the governmental information on that. Do you find it easy to access online information of the EU institutions? Okay, over half of the participants sometimes find it easy. Then we have, as a second most popular response, no, 25% of the participants voted no, and we have a 5% that never tried to access online information of the EU institutions. And then we have the questions about e-participation tools and whether participants have used it, and 80% has used such tools. And interestingly, we have a 5% that doesn't know. So maybe this calls for some recommendations on how to recognize e-participation tools and how to seek them. Okay, that's interesting. And would you be comfortable in voting online for the next European elections? Okay, most of the people said yes. That's an interesting response. I mean, 2024 is close, so let's see. Okay, and then we have some open questions. What do you think is the main challenge to accessing e-governmental services online? The design of the IT services, the level of user friendliness, what we discussed already, Elisa, the design of IT tenders and government's capacity to deliver top-of-the-line IT solutions, well put, which is traditionally limited. Okay. It's sometimes hard to find complex navigation, again, about the user friendliness, complexity, lack of digital skills. We will elaborate on this also in the last part for digital education, but yes, digital skills is transversal when we're talking about digital transformation, low digital literacy, and the list goes on. What should be improved in terms of accessibility and inclusiveness in digital democracy? Again, we have the design of the services so that it is proposed to be user-centric, with higher standards of quality. Complexity expresses through simplicity, and good user interface is usually a challenge for public services. Yes, indeed. Websites made much simpler with an end user in mind. More mobile apps, okay, that's interesting. So instead of logging in through the browser, we can have the apps, raising awareness for the benefits of digital skills, and trainings, places where people can get help, such as libraries. So there is an introduction of the physical space here in order to drive people to the digital space. Okay, Lisa, what's your takeaway?
Yeah, sure. This is all very interesting. Obviously, it is clear from the results that Latvia is also a highly digital society. And I mean, I've worked with manabats.lv for a long time now, and I know that the e-participation side of things is also very strong there, which is not the case in other European countries, that's for sure. Also, the results that came on, for example, the European elections in Ireland and in Portugal, the results were much lower in a yes because of the trust that people have in the e-voting system, which is obviously not much the case, most probably in Latvian citizens, because of the fact that maybe people trust the use of IT for these services much more compared to other countries. If Imants is there, I mean, he can also have a few comments on this, maybe on the results.
Yes. Do you want to share something, or do you have anything to discuss on this? Or if not, it's okay.
Well, I find it interesting that yeah, several answers time and time again are mentioning complexity and simplicity. So I assume this is something that we have noticed throughout our experiences, but yeah, I actually wanted to comment that I think we are very humble. We're very humble because nobody claimed to be expert, and I'm like, really, guys? There are definitely experts here, plenty. We are very humble people, apparently. But actually, our colleagues from Ukraine have also commented that we are far too humble, but fine. Complexity and simplicity is something that definitely is worth pursuing, because we find it a challenge in in Moneyval services as well. Concerning the voting, the peculiar thing is that, well, in Latvia, we don't have digital elections. At the same time, we're very ready to use them. So
yeah, I see that.
That's amazing. Anything else? Well, yeah. Nothing.
And I mean, all of the improvement in terms of accessibility and inclusiveness are obviously valid points. I mean, especially if you've been on for example, on the European Union's website, they definitely could be much more user-friendly. We work at ICAS together with the Commission on different services, and yeah, it's the biggest feedback that we give them, but obviously they have a whole system in place to make things sometimes a bit more complex than they should be. And it's very hard to get that balance of the user friendliness and inclusiveness and the whole protection of data and yeah, the format of the European Union following their whole visual design and everything. So that's why also some governmental services are so complex as well, which is not a justification, but also trying to see the other side of things.
I just want to add that I've heard the same maybe complaint or a comment, both from people working with Latvian national digital systems from state officials, but also from people working in Central European bureaucracy and Commission, that basically there's a high level of complaints about how systems are not user-friendly. Systems are very difficult to master, very difficult to understand, and from my side, I absolutely understand that public sector is struggling with delivering the same amazing accessibility that, for example, Google can build into its systems. But at the same time, the amount of people using public services is pretty much similar to what Facebook and Google user base is. So there is this challenge. How do we? Because basically, for example, in one parliament, I think it was Slovakian parliament, they boasted to me that, oh, they have amazing IT system, they have built it, and every year they are organizing many seminars to teach public to use it. And I'm like, seriously, guys, you have something is not right. If your IT system is good, you shouldn't need to educate the public how to use it. You haven't done it correctly. So this challenge is very long term and very massive, both on national and international scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure, in the camera, right. Hi, I'm Didis, I'm communications manager for Moneyvals. And I had a comment that we're going very technical, and we are about the technical improvements needed, and they are needed. But what we really also need is this operationability or something, meaning really involving people, not just making it easier for people to participate, but also involving them. And here comes my comment I wrote, what should be improved. And I wrote that it is funding for NGOs and CSOs dealing with specific groups like, I don't know, patients, neighborhoods, seniors, right? And we have all the tech needed, yeah? Like in my voice also, especially for diaspora, actually, European diaspora, hey guys, they're what? Hundreds of thousands of people going around and going away from participation in their countries and not going into participation on the EU level. Yeah, and there are ways for the same seniors or the diaspora how to provide it, and but it needs to be funded. Both on the technical side and on the management side, administration side, and someone has to do it. And there are people, I see here faces in our auditorium and people ready to do it, but they have to be funded for this purpose. And well, that's it.
Thanks for your comment. You're completely like, this was one of the recommendations that came out from the convention as well, about funding human resources for NGOs to really support the digital inclusiveness of, for example, categories such as seniors. But we had a whole list of also other people that should be included, like low income households or single mothers or single fathers. Anyway, we had really migrants as well, people with disability, etc.
Great. I hate to interrupt such an interesting conversation, but I would suggest that we move on to the digital economy, because we have a lot of such conversations to make at the end of its focus area. So, Lisa, what do you say?
Yes, let's go to digital economy. There will be more time for everyone to give more feedback, because we have another 4 topics. So,
of course. Great. So let's begin about the digital economy and the development.
I'll go quite quickly because in the end, like all of these notions are not really needed for the co-creation. It's just to showcase a bit what we did at the EU level. So for digital economy, we talked about the development of an economy that is based on digital computing, of course. And we mentioned a few concepts. We didn't touch upon everything, but the recommendations come from the brainstorming of these different contexts, which was digital industry 4.0. So for example, the Internet of Things, cloud computing, etc. Then we also spoke about digital finance, which is the impact of these new technologies on the financial services and the financial industry. So for example, the way of providing banking systems. And then data economy, which was the creation of a single market for data in the EU, where data can flow across the sectors more easily and more efficiently to benefit all, and the rules for access and data are fair, practical, and clear and respected. We also spoke a bit about supporting green digital solutions, so combining the environmental aspects with the digital, digital technologies for the benefit of the environment, mainly investing in more green digital technologies. Then social welfare also was something that we mentioned in the digital age. So the transformation of public welfare services, and also digital businesses and companies, the use of these technologies to create new value in business models, customer experiences, and internal capabilities to support its core operations. So examples of digital models are Uber, Amazon, etc. So let's see now what were the recommendations and especially the proposed actions. As you can see on the side on the left, the main challenges were mainly around accessibility of this digital economy, and also a lot of discussions around the creation of a single market for data in the EU, which doesn't exist yet. So the proposed actions, I have just 4 just to show you. So the first one is really to support digitally and socially excluded groups with funds, resources, and digital transition programs. So this is really something that we want to target people that are left behind due to inaccessibility, unavailability, unaffordability of technologies, or due to their lack of connectivity of digital skills. So really to support these, categories that I was mentioning, low-income households, migrants, women in some sorts, and etc. Then to introduce corporate tax rules so that profits are registered and taxed based on where the businesses geographically have significant interaction with users through digital channels. So this is very European, this is very EU as a recommendation. Then set up a central pool of advisors that can be requested by smaller companies to advise them what can be improved. So something that was really talked about in the Conference of the Future of Europe was also how to support SMEs, so small and medium enterprises. And then the fourth one is around cryptocurrencies and about how to improve the market in crypto assets, the MiCA regulation, which is being worked on at the European Union. If you follow cryptocurrency regulation, of course, you know that there's not much at the European Union at the moment. They're really at the start of it. So it must be sufficiently differentiate between the crypto assets type to establish a single taxonomy, while also remaining open to new development, which is a fine balance to actually have. So we were reflecting a lot about the Ukrainian invasion and everything, and how cryptocurrencies were taken, and in situations in which authoritarian regimes try to circumvent global sanctions via crypto assets. So this is why we were reflecting on a regulation of cryptocurrencies as well. At the moment, of course, there's just not much going on around this. So this is why we were thinking about what can happen in the future. Okay, so this was a bit of the context of the European level and what European NGOs were thinking about. So now we'll start the co-creation and see what you think about digital economy.
Thank you, Elisa. Okay, let me again go through the questions we have prepared, and then in the meantime, you can all log into Slido and try sharing your ideas. So the first question would be, do you think digital finance, the impact of new technologies on the financial services industry, such as banking and financial services, is accessible to everyone? And what could be done to improve the accessibility to these services? Do you see the use of technology to create new value in business models, customer experiences, and the internal capabilities that support its cooperation, such as Uber and Amazon, like Lisa discussed briefly? And then, do you think these internal capabilities are a good thing or a bad thing for our society? And then finally, any other suggestions on how to make our digital economy more inclusive? We thought giving you the room to propose your own recommendations through an open question would be ideal here. So I will give you some time. We already have some responses, but let's give 2 minutes for everyone to contribute. Okay, we already have 11 contributions, so I will start discussing, and so we'll see as we go through. Okay, we reached 15. Okay, that's nice. So regarding the digital finance and accessibility, most of the participants don't think that the impact of new technologies on the financial services industry is accessible to everyone. Okay, it would be interesting to see the response to the final question. Maybe they have some recommendations on what could be the case, and what could be done to improve the accessibility of these services, taking into account special needs of elderly and people with disability and providing them with access to tools and technology, combining digital and phone consultations in delivering these services by default. Okay, sadly, but mostly it's a generational change, but there is no there is no recommendation there. It's a matter of fact. So this fact by its own is an additional obstacle. User mode differentiations depending on the user, senior experienced users, etc. Okay, and then digital literacy, and we have more to the list, but I will move on. Do you see the use of technology to create new value in business models, customer experiences, and the internal capabilities that support its corporations as a mainly good thing or bad thing for our society? Okay, we have an even result here between mainly good and sometimes good, sometimes bad, and we have a 5% of people that think it's mainly bad. Okay, so that's interesting, and let's see the open question, the final open question. About the suggestions on how to make digital economy more inclusive. Most vulnerable benefit always less. Okay, that's a matter of fact again. And educating, training society, the digital skills is crucial. That includes also info on fraud avoidance, misinformation, and basic security skill set. That's actually very interesting, because most of the people I talk or I view some documentaries on intergenerational obstacles in regards to digital transformation. Most of the people say, I am afraid they will steal my money, so I don't use it, most of seniors. So actually having a training on fraud avoidance and misinformation can help raise confidence and, of course, the required skill set. Transfer the traditional rights like unions, etc., regarding social protection to the gig economy. Okay, that's interesting. More public information on what it is, no suggestions currently. Okay, the list goes on, but would you like Elisa to comment on something, or maybe we can have a discussion in the room?
Yeah, I mean, it's open for discussions in the room, so I'm curious to know more about the value of companies and the previous question. And I also like the comments on the fact that sadly it is a generational change, which I do think that we are in a transition phase. So I completely agree with that, that sometimes there's just maybe, yeah, we can do as much as we want at the moment to be inclusive as possible, of course, but some things are just a transition moment in history, and we just have to go with the flow as well. So yeah, if there are anyone who wants to comment on the new value in business models, because obviously sometimes they can be good and bad, but it's nice to see that according to many, it can also be just mainly good. So there's a lot of from Latvian citizens, I see there's a lot of push for creating new business models. While I remember, I think it was in Portugal or in Ireland, I think that the percentage was much less on mainly good.
Yes, indeed, this is the biggest percentage we have gotten for mainly good.
Yeah.
In this question. I'm sorry. Maybe, yes, of course. Please, the floor is yours.
I wanted to add one more aspect that I see too rarely being mentioned. I wasn't sure in which comment to write it, but then I'll say it this way. Basically, one issue that I think should be raised more often is something that we can't really address that easily on national scale, and it's the question of the impact of the basically monopolists, the huge American monopolists, Amazon, Google, Facebook. Yes, they have brought huge innovations, that is true, but the amount of talent that they have sucked out of the rest of the economy, the amount of liquidated working places, startups, companies in the rest of the economy, that's huge. That's a huge amount of sucked out blood out of the rest of the economy. And Plus, these are not European companies. They are not even based in Europe. Sure, for tax purposes, there's Ireland, but that's not the actual headquarters. So what we can't really address on Latvian scale is, well, we can see how Facebook dared to basically threaten Australia, which isn't really Somalia or Zimbabwe, to threaten to go out of Australia if the government doesn't do what the Facebook demands it to do. So the amount of power or influence, at least what they think they have, is pretty large. And so what we can't do alone, for example, Latvia or Lithuania or Estonia, we can do as a European community together. And that is addressing these basically monopolies, because I think they are harmful. I think they are doing, well, they are too good to stay like they are. They're far too strong. And of course, it's good for American government, for American soft power, global soft power. That's true, but they are not European companies, and they have done too much damage.
Thanks, Imants, for the very valid comment. And Vasiliki, just so you know, we have a hand raised in the online part of the conference.
Okay, great. Actually, this was what I was about to say, that of course, if people joining online want to share, they should raise their hand, and hopefully, because I'm sharing the screen, Elisa, you can let me know. Okay, of course, whoever has their hands up, they can speak.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Ines, and I work for Latvian NGDO platform on development aid issues mainly. And therefore, of course, the previous comment on multinationals was quite touching for me also. And I think actually this point of generations is something that we like to say as an argument, but maybe it is not. I think we need to transfer it more to the point of income inequality, which is rising around the globe and which is very high and stagnating also in Latvia. And what we see actually is that people who are under these very low income, how to say, tensions, they have higher burdens for getting some non-digital services because they have also lower access and lower possibilities for trainings. They just don't have time for that. They don't have money for different digital resources and instruments. And also it relates to the previous topic of democracy. They just have less time to exercise democracy. It's digital or non-digital. So I think this income inequality issue, which is actually is consequence of these multinationals and also bigger companies in Latvia who are dodging taxes, who are having aggressive tax planning policies, is the real reason what we should fight before we find tools how we can change things. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ines. I completely agree. I just wanted to say a few things on my side as well, that I completely agree with Imants and Ines that these are really important things. Actually, I wrote them down because in the final report, I think that these should be included. And I mean, I also wrote a piece a few years ago about how the tech companies now, they have really a gigantic influence also on democracy in general. How people are receiving also all of their information through social media. Private companies such as Facebook is quite scary. Like, it obviously has a potential, but at the same time can be also a big danger on how people are shaping their ideas around politics and democracy and everything. So I completely agree that Facebook and private companies should also sometimes be part of the conversations when we're creating certain laws and everything. And on the income equality, I also completely agree. I do think it's sometimes a generational thing because, like, as much as I explained to my father how his TV should be working or his iPad, it never really works out. So, and while I see that with my kid who's 2 years old is already swiping on my phone on his own, I can see the generational gap, but obviously, jokes aside, the income equality is the most important thing at the moment, because the ones from low income households, as I said, are always the ones that are left behind. That's what we see during our research studies around digital policies. So obviously there is a disadvantage for those coming from a lower income household with lower education, etc. So thanks a lot. And if there are other comments, of course, if not, we can move on to the next topic.
Yes, let's move on. Okay, let's move to the digital rights focus area. Elisa, would you do us the honors?
Yes, okay. So just again, quickly, because it's not important to know everything, but when we spoke about digital rights, we were talking about defending rights and freedoms online. So this means secure and sustainable digital infrastructure, the right of everyone to have access to these technological infrastructures. So the concepts that we talked about are on the screen: digital citizenship, so meaning developing a sort of framework of digital rights and principles that can help promote EU values in the digital space. Digital services, the right, so what is the right to digital services? The right to fair, transparent, accountable digital services content and moderation processes. The right to online privacy, so the privacy protection of the individual while this person is connected online, of course. Then the right to EU information, the right to access information, as we said, e-transparency, so by governments, companies, etc. Net neutrality, which is the right to the internet access, which should be offered to everyone on a non-discriminatory basis without favoring certain website, application, or services. The right to data, both protection and retention, so the right to protect the data and knowledge about how the data is retained on a certain website, then from certain services, of course. And then the right to the copyright was discussed. So traditionally, the exclusive and assignable legal right to give the originator for a fixed number of years to print, publish, perform, film, or record literary, artistic, or musical material. But in the digital age, the copyright should be implemented in a way to benefit also creators and the society itself. Then the online safety of journalists was touched upon to ensure that journalists are protected and that there's a plurality of voices in digital media markets. And then protecting fundamental rights in general on the online environment. And so we can see that here on the left, the main challenges were again to ensure the accessibility of digital infrastructure and tools to the entire population, to ensure inclusiveness and equality, to ensure that corruption and censorship do not occur in regard to control of data and freedoms online. So ensuring also online privacy and data protection, and ensuring net neutrality. So these were the things that came up around the challenges of defending rights and freedoms online. So some proposed actions: a strong e-privacy regulation should be adopted swiftly. It's being done by the European Union, of course. It has been done, but it has to be also done nationally by the member states. Then protect highly sensitive information. So what has been seen is that there are still some biases online, of course. So sensitive information can be migration status, sexual orientation, race, or anything around the economic conditions of a person. So how can we protect this information? We can restrict access to this information as much as possible, of course, and limit the requirement of this information for exceptional cases, still to be defined, but can be a solution. And ensuring public decisions are not based on big data and biased algorithms. So we talked a lot about also AI and algorithms that we'll mention later. Monitor any attempts to introduce practices such as zero rating that undermine net neutrality, and that take regulatory action where needed. Ensure that encryption is protected in the upcoming chat control legislation. There's one that is being done at the EU level and other attempts to undermine it, to build public digital infrastructures more often, like Wi-Fi station and public charging stations, and ensure its financial sustainability of these digital infrastructures. Then another big topic we talked about was to ban mass surveillance and facial recognition technologies. Now, this is a very controversial issue. There was even a European citizens initiative that was launched on banning mass facial recognition technologies, because of course, they can undermine the environment for democratic societies and threatening political pluralism, civil and political rights. And then also we talk more specifically about reforming the copyright directive to allow exemptions from people with disability to access ebooks, films, and music.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. I will dive into the co-creation session to save time for discussion. So, do you think everyone in the EU should have the right to free, affordable, high-speed internet and access to technological infrastructures? Do you think your rights are sufficiently protected online? Is it clear to you how your personal data is treated every time you connect online? What do you do if it's unclear? And how should we ensure all citizens know what their rights are when they connect to the internet? I will give you 2 minutes to formulate your responses, and we will then discuss, as we always do. Okay, let's start with the response. Okay. Do you think everyone in the EU should have the right to free, affordable, high-speed internet and access to technological infrastructure? 86% of the participants say yes. We have a 7% that says no, and a 7% that says I do not know. Okay, 88% says yes, and we have 16 contributions. Then, do you think your rights are sufficiently protected online? 44% says sometimes, and then we have yes as the last response and no as the second one. So with 29% compared to 12% for yes. So that is an interesting takeaway. And we have 17 responses already. And then is it clear to you how your personal data is treated every time you connect online? Again, sometimes. The second response is no with 33%, and then yes with 11%, and finally 6% for I do not know. And for our open question, what do you do if it's unclear? It depends on the situation. Either I seek more information or disconnect. Public education campaigns. Okay, this would be like what the society does to make it more clear, and it's a very interesting point. I think everyone can benefit from understanding better the GDPR policies. Refraining from using a given thing, accessing the service provider to gain clarification on the processing. I do not really care. Don't connect. Okay. And how should we ensure all citizens know what their rights are when they connect to the internet? Education, browser companies could by default offer and include that information to users, might be included into the architecture facing citizens to critical situations via stress tests, information campaigns, maybe stated terms and conditions. Okay. Elisa, I think it's pretty clear. What do you think?
Yeah, it's pretty clear to me, and there are some good recommendations. I'm always curious to see why some people think, because it already happened, I think in Portugal, that some people thought that, you know, not every EU citizen should have the right to the internet. So I'm not sure why that is, but it's interesting to see if there are any comments on this.
if someone wants to comment on this without like do it anonymously, they can use the Q&A of the slide. If someone indeed wants to formulate an argument on why affordable high-speed internet and access to technological infrastructure should not be a right. But I think
so maybe I can explain also, because I didn't, why we talked about this. It's just because in a democracy and in our European society as well, in many countries and also at the EU level, we see more and more e-government services that require the internet access. And of course, one could say that you can complement the internet with more offline services. That's also perfectly fine. But if you do expect citizens to participate in a society and in a democracy by using certain online services, then you should provide that specific those citizens also with internet as a right for them, because it's a bit difficult to expect citizens to use the internet to be part of society when they don't have the right to, to have it. So people from low income households, or people who just can't connect for their own reasons, like people with disabilities and things like that.
Indeed.
But of course, we always push for complementing all of these online services with offline services, which should always be the case.
Of course, and I have not received a response through the Q&A, but just to say, in Portugal, we also had one participant that stated no, and in the response, because again, we asked why do you think that is, and anonymously in Slido, he explained that it is because of the cost that would bring to the public. Just to say it may be an argument there, just to give both sides a fighting chance here. So yeah, do we have any raised hands from the audience online, Elisa?
No, not of ICO.
Okay. So then if no one has something to add, I can move on to the digital safeguards focus area.
Yes,
great.
We just have digital safeguards and digital education to talk about. So digital safeguards, there are many concepts that we talked about here, and I'll just go through them. So when we talk about digital safeguards, it means what the politician should be putting in place. So laws, regulations, etc., to ensure the respect of values, ethics, and norms in the digital space. So this is what we mean with safeguards, what we want these EU politicians to be implementing as laws and regulations to make sure that citizens are in a secure digital space every time they use the internet. Okay, so we talked about cybersecurity. Of course, you know what that is. It's the protection from hackers, frauds, viruses, and also the managing of hybrid attacks. Then we talked about artificial intelligence. And what we strive for is an AI that is ethical and protects people, communities, and societies from the escalating economic, political, and societal issues posed by AI. Together with AI, obviously, algorithms. So we strive for the transparency of algorithms. Online disinformation was one of the topics. So the protection against false, inaccurate, misleading information that could be used intentionally to cause public harm or make a profit. Then we had audio media services. So civil society organizations have been pushing for regulation of the online content and the role of online platforms in disseminating that, to ensure that it doesn't pose a threat to the impact on freedom of expression and access to information. The sixth one is integrity of elections. So to protect the integrity of elections and promotion of democratic participation. The seventh one was around online hate speech. So the prevention of practices that denigrates people based on their race, ethnicity, gender, social status. And last but not least, laws around illegal content online. So how to prevent and effectively tackle illegal content online. So now we can talk about what were the challenges that we found around these topics. Of course, to ensure cybersecurity, to ensure an ethical use of AI, to ensure the transparency of how algorithms work, because most citizens don't know that, monitoring of online disinformation, ensuring accessibility as usual, and monitoring of online hate speech. So we had a big discussion around AI, artificial intelligence, because it is very, very difficult to, let's say, know how to frame AI. So this is why our proposal to the EU was to develop a specific framework that determines the extent, type, and form and moment of human intervention in an AI automated system. In this framework, one of the determining criteria should be the AI's impact on rights, duties, and liberties. So I can give you just a concrete example of why we were talking about this, because in the beginning, civil society organizations were discussing that every AI should be complemented by a human intervention. That means that every time there is a response generated from an AI, there should be someone to be decided who, of course, to intervene and check if the AI is good. However, there was a whole discussion on how, for example, Facebook AIs work in immediately taking out the illegal content online. And this is done automatically by the AI without any human intervention. And there is research showing that in certain cases, when there is very, very, very bad material that is on Facebook, for example, it is better to just have the AI intervene, because human intervention actually brings those human to difficult psychological challenges such as mental depression and things like that. So it is better in some cases to not have a human intervention and just to have the AI do things for us automatically. So this is why we didn't 100% in the end say that there has to be an human intervention every single time, but we think that the EU should develop a framework that determines when human intervention and how that human intervention would happen. So this was an interesting debate that we had, and I'm curious to also hear your side of things. Then we thought about military uses of AI to regulate AI systems, including those that fall under the remit of the Common Foreign and Security Policy. Of course, as you know, that's the branch of the EU that works around military and defense. So we don't want to, of course, completely ban AI systems for military purposes. I mean, the debate was that it would also put sometimes the EU in a weaker position in the global aspect of things, but for sure regulate it very, very well on how the AI systems could be used for military purposes. So always we're trying to strive a balance. Then provide support and technical policy financial resources for CSOs, countering online hate speech, protecting survivors, and conducting independent media and fact-checking, and also providing digital literacy for education and education on cybersecurity and AI to all citizens. So here again, we talked about how NGOs play an important role in society, and they should be with resources that actually support citizens and, let's say, educating citizens and protecting citizens that are victims of certain things, and also to help citizens understand how, for example, algorithms work and cybersecurity. So the fourth one is about defend fundamental freedoms and deter illegal hate speech by including online content moderation regime that requires a form of human review and accessible, clear criteria. So this is similar. So a human intervention on online content moderation was one of the things that we talked about. And this is really to protect people from illegal hate speech. And then almost the last one, more specific safeguards in the Digital Service Act. This is more technical, I'm not going to go into it. And then also to transpose immediately the Audio Media Service Directive. So there are a bunch of digital policies that are being implemented at the EU. Some of them, according to civil society, are still a bit weak and should be reinforced, and others have been already approved by the EU, but the member states have not transposed them yet to their national laws, and civil society is urging them to do that as quickly as possible. So I think that this was all for digital safeguards.
Thank you, Elisa. Okay, let's dive into the co-creation session then. How can we ensure AI and algorithms do not lead to discrimination? Are there specific safeguards that policymakers should implement, especially to protect vulnerable groups? What are vulnerable groups in our digital society, and what are their vulnerabilities? And by this question, we need you to specify which group has which vulnerability, of course, to try break down as much as possible the specific situations they found themselves in, to then reverse engineer it into solutions. And while the participants are responding, you talked about transparency of algorithm, and I actually have a recent story. So I was in a focus group which was funded by a social media company, and the focus group aimed at identify policy recommendations to make the internet safer and several platforms safer for children online. And one of the questions was, anyway, it had to do like whether it would help to have real identification in order to log in into the social media platforms. And then, as you can understand, it was a very guided focus group. So then I said, no, what would help would be to have transparency of algorithms and see what we can do from the algorithm and not from controlling the individuals and the users. Or of course you can discuss there, but I found it very unfair, the fact that the only troubleshooting was done on behalf of, okay, how do we moderate the users in order not to make it dangerous while the platform is a given. And the faces of the moderators of the focus group went yellow, completely yellow, and they were like, but no, transparency of algorithms, that's not possible, that's not feasible what you're saying. And then I was looking at your slides, and you were explaining what we can do, and I thought this is a very different approach that civil society has towards the problem, how we identify the problem, and what are the key stakeholders to actually find a solution.
Thanks, Vasiliki. That's a good example of how different parts of society have different ideas on how to implement also digital transformation. For sure, our conversations in the working group were around being as transparent as possible, because of course we have these exceptional ways of also helping, you know, human beings in doing things, and we don't want to dismiss the potential of AI or algorithms, but they do need to be regulated and transparent in a way that citizens can fully understand how the decisions are made after the AI has given its results and everything. And also human intervention is also very tricky, because it also depends on the human creating the AI, the human creating the algorithms, and also the humans that are doing something with those results afterwards. So if there's no transparency in the whole process, from creation, development of the process to, you know, to the end result, then it's really a problem.
Yeah.
But it's a difficult topic, of course, and there is no clear way forward at the moment. So that's why it's very interesting to also go to the different nation states and citizens to see what people think about AI.
Well, it's a completely new thing, and therefore the challenge. Okay, we have several responses. I will start reading few. How can we ensure AI and algorithms do not lead to discrimination? Empower NGOs of the interest groups, give them targeted digital participation funding. NGOs are more literate and easy to educate than the individuals, and NGOs then will work as centers and moderators of safe digital participation. That's interesting, and being from the side of NGOs, it's indeed how we view things, or I view things. We need to make sure that the teams creating the AIs and algorithms are diverse, as well as datasets they're using, the datasets are using are inclusive. Regarding the datasets, it is very interesting to see the biases of an algorithm, and because there is a huge research focus right now on AI and the biases of algorithms, and it's very interesting to dive into this, but it's very technical, I'm afraid. Transparency of algorithms. One more person believing that transparency of algorithms has something to contribute to. Test properly on all races, society groups, etc. Okay, so to have the target groups in mind when designing something and get the feedback. Legal responsibility for publicly available services that include discriminative mechanism in it. I will move on. I know people are still responding. I can see it on my slides. So are there specific safeguards that policymakers should implement, especially to protect vulnerable groups? That their opinions and needs are taken into account. Regulations on hate speech. There should be a basic public-owned social network built and maintained by EU. Okay, that's an interesting point. That way, algorithms and manipulation tools in such a public social network as a public service place would be as neutral and inclusive as possible. Facebook gives significant boost to hateful content through algorithms because hate sells well. A public social network would avoid this. And you know, this was exactly my counter argument when people told me in the focus group, when the moderators told me, oh, you know, we cannot have this transparency of algorithms. And I told them, but the problem is not people having anorexia, for example. The problem is Facebook promoting anorexia to anorexic and anorexic standards of living to anorexic people. So it leads to fostering this phenomenon. And then some options like if advisory committee on equal opportunities for women and men, on opinion on AI, opportunities and challenges for gender equality, education and digital literacy as a norm. Okay, yes, as we said, digital literacy goes throughout the focus areas of digital transformation. The vulnerable groups of our society are elderly, women, people living in remote areas, seniors, again, low income, refugees, people with disabilities, girls and women, seniors, migrants, minorities, people with disabilities, elderly. There is a common understanding on what vulnerable groups are, and let's dive into their vulnerability. Access to technology, language, reading, other difficulties like digital skills, all have less knowledge and awareness of the topic. So all the vulnerable groups have less knowledge and awareness of the topic. Different disabilities, they can be discriminated online. Elderly, they have no such knowledge as young ones have. That's why they can be taken advantage of. But sight, hearing problems, no digital education. It's cut off because of the list going down, but I see ACT skills and access to lack of access to hardware, I suppose, as a vulnerability. Okay, Elisa, do you have some points, or can we move to education, to the education focus area?
No, I don't really have specific points. It's just good to see that we covered most of the vulnerable people in our discussions, and it's good to see that, yeah, there's a common understanding of what the vulnerable groups are in our society and why they have also difficulties online, of course. And that's the whole point of this exercise, is also to confirm certain things that we were talking about and try to come up with recommendations in the end of next year on that we can propose then at the EU level on making sure that institutions are really cautious about these vulnerable groups and how they can actually implement certain changes to include these vulnerable groups in the whole digital transformation process. So it's good to see that.
Great. So if there is no one raising their hand online, I will move to digital education.
Yes, it's our last one, and I know everyone must be quite tired, so there have been a lot of concepts going on. So I'll go quickly on digital education, which is quite understandable, of course, and it's about how we can reset education and training for the digital age. So we talked about digital competences, digital skills, digital learning, media literacy, and awareness raising. So for digital competences, we mean really the basic set of digital skills covering data literacy, online communication and collaboration, digital content creation, safety, and problem solving. While for digital skills, we meant really the skills that a professional needs to actually guarantee that their work is, is going well. So the digital skills for ICT professionals or other professionals that need the internet for their jobs. Then digital learning is about the innovative use of digital tools and technologies during teaching and learning, of course. Media literacy, so meaning that people, when they access the internet, they can critically evaluate and create or shape the media, that they can understand, of course, very clearly what happens online. And then raising awareness, so informing and communicating to citizens about digital practices. So these are the 5 basic themes that we were talking about. And then we had a few recommendations here. As usual, the challenges were access to the digital, ensuring digital literacy for all citizens, and data protection. And here there were some proposed actions, such as develop trainings and EU programs on digital skills. So here, it was interesting that we had a conversation that it shouldn't be only about hard skills, so technical skills, but we need also trainings about soft skills and ethics. And this means also that we need to tailor these skills to the citizens, especially in vulnerable positions, including people with disabilities, elderly people, people with non-education, refugees, low-skilled adults, low and single women, low-income households, or people facing social exclusion. And we need obviously funding for such actions. So, and then afterwards, we were also talking about specifically EU-funded programs for CSOs to support the development of these digital education strategies, especially with regards to digital skills and competencies beyond formal education. So really non-formal education after, mandatory school years. And to consult also informational education trainings when developing digital education plans, both at European and national levels. So we really think that the strategies at EU and national levels sometimes do not include people in society that should be included. And this means teachers, CSOs, etc. So these people should be part of the conversations when educational plans are being done at the European and the national level. And then the last point, which is also very important, and we've seen this during COVID especially, is to train teachers and public administrations in the essentials of digital technologies, software, algorithms, to foster greater understanding and better discussion and handling, therefore, of the transmission of the knowledge. And unfortunately, we've really seen it during COVID times that the digital skills that especially teachers didn't have to tackle the whole situation was quite remarkable. So this also came from a discussion in those times. All right, I think that that's all.
Thank you, Elisa. Okay, I will start reading out the questions. Are digital education initiatives in Latvia easy to find and accessible for all vulnerable groups, all people, minorities? We discussed how we identify the vulnerable groups here. Then are you aware of any classes or informal workshops given on digital education? Are there enough opportunities for individuals and communities to attain a digital education after formal education? Who could support in giving free digital education to citizens? And we have some options here, CSOs, universities, public institutions, and local authorities or private companies. If you have any questions on a particular app or platform, who would you ask for help? Okay, and then who do you think needs digital education the most? Who is currently left behind? And finally, what are your suggestions for ensuring every citizen has digital education and skills to navigate our digitalized society? Okay, these are
Let's give a few minutes and then we'll see.
No. Regarding what you said about the training of educators, I think after the COVID, just like you said, the Commission published the new Digital Education Action Plan, and the education of trainers in the various formats of learning was prominent there, but I think it needs to build like a pyramid of knowledge, because also for experts of digital education, we're still learning, and there are so many formats, so many ways of engaging students, so many ways of delivering content in a new way, and today's event is such an initiative. I think we're trying to see how we can combine online with offline, exchanging conversations and delivering some content to raise awareness. So I think there is a lot of work to be done also on the experts level, and then to see how the national authorities may allocate this knowledge to the trainers, like how to operationalize it and how to make trainers truly well trained, well educated on, and to develop the skills to use these tools seamlessly in their educational designs.
Yeah, I just think that the main problem of education is the lack of funding. I don't know how it is in all EU member states, but nationally speaking, in Italy, for example, there has been so many cuts in funding of the educational sector. And I don't think it's only in Italy, but yeah, our situation sometimes is very, yeah. And the saddest thing is that the cuts are usually on educational sector, health sector, and things like that. So I find it very difficult, to also strive for things like that. So I guess that this is why a lot of suggestions came to also just fund more CSOs that can be intermediaries between these citizens and the educational sector, and to support also the non-formal, education, and just to do it throughout a lifetime for people to have the possibility to learn about digital tools and digital rights and everything, also beyond their formal education.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I'm interested to see what the participants think about the various sources of informal education. We have a question later on. And maybe if someone knows about the education expenditures in Latvia, if they're cut or if they're raised during the last years, that would be also a very interesting talk. Okay, I will start outlining the main results. Are digital education initiatives in Latvia easy to find and accessible for all vulnerable groups? We have a 40% not easy to find and not accessible, and I am not sure which I would say contributes even more to not easy to find. We have 18% saying easy to find but not fully accessible, and no one has responded that they're both easy to find and mostly accessible, which is a bit worrying. Are you aware of any classes or informal workshops given on digital education? We have a 61% saying yes, 22% saying no, and 17% saying I do not know. Considering the audience, the fact that we are people mainly working on digital transformation or CSOs and stuff, I think this is worrying because the 61% of us know of such workshops, some do not know. So maybe this indicates a lack of availability in our field. And then, are there enough opportunities for individuals or communities to attain a digital education after formal education? No, or I do not know. And then we have 17% saying yes. Okay. And then who could support in giving free digital education to citizens? CSOs, universities, local authorities, etc. So, okay, most of the people responded NGOs. Then second, we have public institutions, then private companies, and then other. So by other, it would be interesting if you want to respond to the Q&A and explain, you can, yeah, of course. All of them. Okay, that's a nice takeaway, Elisa. So it's not that we forgot some actor, but mainly that they need to work together to attain results. Thank you. If you have any questions on a particular app, who do you contact? Most would contact a friend or a family member. Few would contact an NGO or a public institution. I think no one would contact a private company, and we have 17% that would contact other. If they want, they can either speak up, either online or physically in the room, or they can tell us what the other option was through the Q&A. Do we have anyone in the chat of the Zoom, Elisa?
No, I'm checking as well. Oh, other is depending on what app it is. Oh yeah, if you want, you can take the floor, Ineta.
Sorry?
I see a hand raised. Oh, there you go.
Nice.
Yes, hi.
Hello.
Well, do you hear me?
Yes, very well.
I'm taking part from Zurich, so it's quite a distance.
Okay, great.
So I just wanted to share some of my concerns and also why I think our respondents have put so low mark for NGOs as a potential contact or information provider. And our network, Women's NGOs Cooperation Network, was in taking over the campaign against poverty and social exclusion back in 2010. And we created a tool, an online tool for people to access free of charge services and trainings and food and everything. And we trained the librarians to help people to find these informations. And we learned, and it is it has been a major issue for people to actually access NGOs, because many of those NGOs are not having full-time employees. They are not having contact phones that reply during the workday, which is a sign of actually the capacity of our civil society. And also many NGOs cannot be addressed even by email, because when we try to find and browse through all the NGOs that are registered who would provide their working hours, it was impossible. That's why I think at this moment, and I put in all my replies, only those NGOs that have capacity and who are representative, like Youth Council, European Disability Forum national member Sustento, or us as the European Women's Lobby Coordination, or European Anti-Poverty Platform Latvian coordinations, that we must be empowered to provide access, to provide guidance, to provide consultancies. And is it government who pays for it, or is it the European Commission? It doesn't matter, but it cannot be done, unfortunately, on volunteer basis if we want to empower large groups of people. Because then we can grant the funding for our local members to provide trainings. We do a lot of trainings also on digital skills, and especially for vulnerable groups like Roma women. But the access, and that's why I insisted that the access should be at local level. It should be the computer classes in local authorities or schools open for it. But then the competencies should come from NGOs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a fair point. Lisa, do you have
Yeah,
something
no,
to add?
that was great, and I definitely wrote this down because we're definitely gonna log this in our report. And honestly, I agree with you that and that's not only I agree with you, but this was really the biggest discussion that we have always at the European civil society level, that without human resources and funding, decent funding, it is just really hard for NGOs to even survive. Especially, we've seen in these last years how many global challenges and, we've had, and during the pandemic, it has been a disaster for smaller NGOs to even survive. And, it's very, very hard if we're not taken seriously at that level to actually, be valued for the competences that we can bring to society, to be mediators between citizens and EU institutions and national institutions as well. It is very difficult. And I completely think that the recommendation of giving more funding to and human resources to, NGOs is a big one in all of this.
If I may just add, I think, you see, the problem in Latvia with funding and also on digital skills, it has been given in different times to different organizations, but there is no, unless it is the representative organization of retired people or so on, those skills are gonna disperse, the people are leaving, the volunteers, the employees, the project staff, but it should be really based on representative organizations of those vulnerable groups. If we know that in Latvia there is one organization that provides support for refugees, that should be included in their service package to support those refugees, to access those skills, to access and so on. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, completely. Point taken, completely agree also on that. And I like what you said, that the access has to be at the local level, but then the competences, they can come from the EU level, they can come from the CSO level, they can come from the umbrella organizations, but the access has to be at the local level, of course.
Well, thank you both. Very interesting points, but I will have to move on to the next co-creation questions. These are open questions. Who do you think needs digital education the most? Rural areas, again, linking to the local level, because usually when you want to access rural areas, the most effective way to do it is actually go there and again transfer them from the physical area to the digital space. people from rural areas, healthcare professionals, teachers, financially struggling people, elderly, people with low income, old people, seniors, and people with low income, seniors, handicapped, and refugees. And then what are your suggestions for ensuring every citizen has a digital education and skills to navigate our digitalized society, ensure availability of infrastructure and person to trust and ask questions, to have country or Europe-wide programs that are free of charge and supported by governments and companies, training programs in cooperation with employers, paid time to learn during the working hours, more public support, simplicity and thus accessibility of public digital services, funds for ever higher raising IT education quality in schools. And I cannot view the rest of the list because the slide feature is a bit narrowing down. Okay, that's interesting. Thank you very much for all the contributions. If I could ask you for filling in one more survey as we also go through discussions to just get some feedback, and you can scan this QR now. This is an EU survey, and it will help us understand what we did right, what we did wrong, and where do you stand in terms of understanding what the EU does for inclusion of several vulnerable groups, and this will help us therefore understand our audience better. You can put the reference of the project, which is 10 10 51 53 4. Then as a type of activity, please put in the drop-down menu, pick mutual learning. For the title of the event, you can just use Inclusive Digital Transformation Latvia. The date today is 18th of October 2022. The duration of the event is 1 day, and the type is hybrid event. While all the participants go through the survey and give us their valuable feedback, Elisa, any takeaways?
No, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who joined today. It's really important for us to bring what is being done at the EU level to the national member states. And also thank you if you can just fill in this survey. As you know, this was a project activity that was funded by the European Union, and they're really pushing us to have participants do this survey. We know it's super long, and we thank you already for doing it. It wasn't like from our side, but it was more from the European Commission to know like how you felt about this type of event that we proposed. And of course, I know that you're all experts, participants here, so I thank you even for your time and for your valuable contributions on this topic. It's not an easy topic. It was funny to see how in the conference of the future of Europe, even the politicians and the decision makers were in a lot of other topics, especially like foreign affairs, migration, and things like that. And there were a lot of controversies. Funnily enough, on digital transformation, I didn't feel like there were enough decision makers and politicians that were interested in joining the conversation, which was, to me, was really interesting, because I know that maybe decision makers are more interested in the migration issues, in the foreign affairs issues, and the democracy issues, and things like that. But digital is really the future, and it's already happening. And it is just strange for me to, to see that sometimes these conversations are not as in-depth as they should be. So it's really valuable for us to also have these types of conversations with you, representatives from NGOs, representatives from local authorities, and also people who just care about the topic and how we can make it better for Europe. What we'll be doing is that we'll be taking all of these contributions from the 10 different countries that we told you about. So 5 this year, 5 next year. And
Elisa,
then we're going to, Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. Just to clarify, after you scan this QR code, you will receive a survey in your screen, and you will be asked to put in the reference of the project, the reference number. It's 10 10 51 53 4.
Yeah, it's the one on the screen.
Yeah, and then type of I am just clarifying because some of the participants here were not sure if this is the correct link and if this is the correct.
It's an EU survey. Yeah.
So it has several tabs. After you put in this data, the type of activity, mutual learning, the title of the event, inclusive digital transformation, Latvia, and the rest, then you will have some other tabs. So there are also 2 other tabs. So just click on next, and then submit. Okay, sorry for interrupting you, Elisa.
Yeah, no problem. As I said, this is something that the European Commission is asking us to do. So it's really grateful to everyone. I was just saying that all of the results from these co-creation processes will come up with a final report, and not only a report, where our aim is to create a handbook on how digital transformation can be inclusive in Europe. And with these contributions, where our intention is to bring them then to the European institutions in 2024, once we have everything. And then, of course, we'll keep everyone informed, and we will let you know how your contributions have then been brought up to the EU level as well. So, and of course, I'm just saying this because it might take a while, because we still need to go to all of the other countries, but we'll let you know how this has impacted also the work of the EU. And then we'll also be creating a report of this event, of course, that we will share with all of the participants. And I thank also Manabals.lv, Imans, Gustav, the whole team, Dase, for supporting us in the co-organization of this event together.
Yes, on my end, I would also like to thank immensely Manalbas and Imats and the whole of the team. It was amazing. They managed to bring us here. I mean, the surroundings are spectacular. Elisa, you should be here.
Yeah, I know, I see.
And of course, the participants, mostly the participants, because I think we did get a lot of interesting, engaging contributions. It was not just, let me fill in this survey. It was like they did participate in the conversation. We had the active conversation also online, which is rare. Usually online participants are more distant, but we could see the engagement there. Also, overall, for me, it was a very nice experience, and I am grateful to all participants and to Mandelbars for making this happen. And of course to you, Elisa, thank you for all this so detailed explanation of all the focus areas, the terms, the dilemmas, the challenges, the legislation. You really put in a lot of content in so narrow time frame that I gave you in order to make this event viable in terms of attention span. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you too. And then, yeah, so
before we go, I would ask the participants to just press on. I know it's a long survey, just as a favor to us, and if the content you saw you deem it valuable, please fill in this survey, because it will really help us get some feedback and see where we stand in terms of audience, and of course for the Commission to also see what we're doing and see the content we're creating. This will help the contributions you made have more value, because of course the report we will give will go hand in hand with the feedback we got. So that's on us. Elisa, any closing words?
No, it's fine. Everything is good. If you have any like feedback, of course, Vasiliki is there. So please also feel free to talk to her and give her also feedback on both the session and also on the survey, because we also think that it's very long, the survey for the commission. So if you have any feedback about it, please let Vasiliki know so that we can log that as well. And then we intend to give feedback also to the commission on these procedures. And then just a funny note, this goes also to how difficult it is sometimes for NGOs to apply for funding and to meet all of the requirements that are necessary to get those fundings. And yeah, sometimes it's important to also give back feedback to the institutions on all of these requirements that we're supposed to comply with in order to do these sorts of activities. So let Vasiliki know anything, and we're happy to convey messages in case.
Yeah, we will. Nevertheless, just please press on and hit that submit button. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
But we will give feedback, of course, and I am here to get all the complaints. Thank you, Elisa. Have a nice day ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.